guys, Dr. Sammy Herbster here, talking about the vagus nerve. Came up today in a rather complex case with someone that has a lot of cardiac issues, and taking that 30,000 foot approach and looking at all the moving pieces and see if there's any kind of correlation. It's really hard not to look at the vagus nerve, because when we look at the neurological system, the vagus nerve is also called the wanderer, and it travels all the way from up behind our ears as a cranial nerve all the way down through our urinary tract. So it goes through our guts, it goes through everything. So when we're talking about systemic things and we're talking about the neurological system, we have to look at the vagus nerve. I'm super geeked out about the vagus nerve because I like posture restoration, and with posture restoration we look heavy into the autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system is what helps us get into that fight or flight state in case of an emergency, in order to protect us, and then it allows us to rest and digest and allows us to recover, and has all of those things going on in the background like breathing and heart rate and blood pressure, and those things are regulated all by the autonomic nervous system. And posture restoration truly treats the autonomic nervous system. So this vagus nerve is fun to me. But in any case, in applying to this situation today, it helped me really break down what the vagus nerve is about. And anytime myself or a trainer or anyone who's trying to get well or to solve a problem, we really have to look at the autonomic nervous system, because the autonomic nervous system is what creates tension in our body at rest, or whether it allows us to actually rest and get in a good position, rest and come back to neutral. I can kind of go back and forth with all of the different metaphors that we use for the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, but the one we want to look at today is going to be the parasympathetic nervous system. But in understanding that this vagus nerve does both and regulates both, and it's kind of a give or take, and sometimes one can over dominate, and that's what gets us into trouble. And without looking at the true cause of the autonomic nervous system and all of the factors that play into it, sometimes I think we maybe misdiagnose or maybe mistreat things from the get-go because we haven't looked at some of this. So vagus nerve sympathetically is going to wander throughout the body, and it's going to do the fight, flight, or freeze. Meaning it is going to be activated, increase tension, increase alertness, and that is driven all throughout the body. The parasympathetic nervous system is what balances it out, and that is what we call rest and digest. And with this, our heart, if we look at our heart rate, we have part that goes to the sympathetic and part that goes to the parasympathetic. One increases blood pressure and heart rate, the other one decreases blood pressure and heart rate. So we're kind of going this back and forth all the time as we get excited or as we rest. And a flexibility between these systems shows a healthy wellness. However, we can get stuck without even knowing it in a sympathetic state. So sympathetic state increases neural activity. Parasympathetic state decreases neural activity, so we can rest, kind of in simplistic tones. So you're saying, okay, this vagus nerve, it wanders throughout. Most of us are stuck in this fight or flight freeze mode because our tension is turned up in our system. We're not allowed to come back to neutral and rest. One of the things that activates the sympathetic nervous system, part of this nervous system, is hypoxemia, meaning when you have a lack of oxygen. So when you exercise, when you aren't properly breathing correctly, when you don't breathe well when you sleep, when our lungs are always hyperinflated because we don't get a full exhale and have our ribs depressed, then this increases the sympathetic tone. Most of us are in a hypoxic state at some point during the day, depending on what we're doing. We just want to make sure that we're not in a hypoxic state all day long, because you can see if we aren't breathing well all day long, we're increasing our sympathetic tone, which plays along the vagal nervous system. The parasympathetic, on the other side, is what we're really going to be focused on, and that's the rest and digest. We want to have good vagal tone. And what that means is if you have good vagal tone, you have the ability for the parasympathetic to kick in and rest you anytime you're stimulated. That means at any time this can kick in and bring you down when you're not in a fearful situation or a matter of survival. Decreased vagal tone is what a lot of us have, and when we don't have this ability to kind of regulate between fight or flight and rest, we get stuck in fight or flight and we have inflammation. Overstimulation of the nervous system is truly what that is, and that's why that vagus nerve can't regulate. And that really kind of just leads to health problems. I call it dead vagal regulation. So when you've got a dead vagal regulation system, how do we get that system to go again? Because that vagal regulation is basically giving us the balance that we don't have. We're way too far and stuck in this side, don't have enough balance of the parasympathetic. How do we exercise the parasympathetic to get it working and rebalance the system? So there is a lot of research out there that exercises vagal tone is what we call it. And what I kind of, as we went through the list, I was like, okay, well, these are all doing kind of common things. So for example, cold shock was one that came up. Cold shock along with gag reflex, they all are correlated to the autonomic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve. So cold shock would be, for example, we're going to take that vagal tone all the way to an extreme, and then we're going to ask our body to regulate and use the parasympathetic system to bring us back to neutral. Another example would be that gag reflex. As soon as something touches the back of your throat, you go into sympathetic, fight, flight, freeze. You panic, it goes all the way to an extreme, and then how is our body going to kick in the parasympathetic and bring us back to neutral? These extremes are what we kind of oscillate in all throughout the day. This centering right here is what we want our vagal tone to always come back to, our system to come back to this balance. If we have way too much sympathetic, we're stuck in an extreme, one way or the other. Parasympathetic is going to bring us back to neutral. Intermittent fasting is one that came up with the vagal tone, exercising vagal tone, and here's why. The vagal nerve is so integrated in the gut. And the gut's only way to communicate with the brain is through the vagal nerve. And so this vagal nerve has such intimate communication with our gut that if we did intermittent fasting and we stopped that system from working and gave it a rest, then we turn down all of our sympathetic tone and we get into a more parasympathetic state. We are turning down nervous system and allowing it to do other things. So that's where the intermittent fasting comes in. Breathing comes in. A lot of breathing that they even go to is being rhythmic, so we can kind of tap into brainstem breathing, slowing down the breathing, being able to regulate heart rate with breathing. Examples in posture restoration are being able to breathe equally out of the left side and the right side, and having these oscillate at all times no matter what position we're in. Sometimes we get stuck in a rib position where only one side of our diaphragm and one side of our ribs work efficiently and the other one is just kind of compensating. However, breathing can get back as simple to having 6 breaths per minute at a rhythm of, let's say, a 4-second inhale, hold 2 seconds, 4-second exhale. Repeating that over and over again is an example of activating and exercising the parasympathetic to help bring down the system. Rhythm, anytime we oscillate from a left to a right, anytime anything is like music, like a metronome, those kind of things exercise vagal tone because it's going from one side to the center to the other side to the center. We're going back and forth in this rhythm, helps our body get in rhythm. So even though it may be in rhythm out here, as we continue to get in rhythm, it gives us the ability to find a better center because we're flowing and we're not stuck. Neutral posture is something where posture restoration comes in and the body is able to be in a safe, non-fight, flight, or freeze state when bones and everything are aligned and pressure is correct and we're able to go all the way to the left and back to the center, and then all the way to the right, because we really truly are designed to move, not be statically still and breathe. So neutral posture through all movement actually starts with breath and decreases the fight, flight, freeze state in the system, so therefore exercises the parasympathetic system. Things about balance, pH balance, anytime we're at a far extreme in pH in our body, it throws everything off. Can we come back to this way? Can we be more acidic? Can we be more basic? We need to find our body's homeostasis, and that the ability for the body to find its own homeostasis becomes challenged. So this tends to be something that we can address to help things systemically find center again. Oxygen and carbon dioxide balance is something that's very measurable when you're in the hospital or you're sick. But the balance that your body is trying to achieve at all times can be enhanced to be more oxygen rich if you are more, I don't want to say more carbon dioxide, but if you don't have as much oxygen saturation that your body's able to utilize. So the body's constantly doing these balances, and these typically tend to be out of whack that systemically can affect everything. These going back and forth affect vagal tone. So that's why they're kind of in this system, because they're so integrated to our systemic processes, and this is so integrated to our gut and everything running in the background. They have an intimate correlation. Massage is one that will help deregulate a system. Just, you're thinking all neurologically, it's going to help relax things, it's going to bring tension down. It's exactly what that happens at the neurological level. And it can help stimulate this parasympathetic state to override our tension and our fight-flight state that we tend to live in. Even more specifically, certain areas of the body that can be massaged are the deep foot. Finding areas deep inside the foot. I don't know exactly what the terms for them are that they use, but from a posture restoration point, the deeper pressure you have in those foot bones, the more your brain can associate that foot with the ground, and that pressure is what it's seeking to feel safe and find the ground. So from posture restoration, I say deep foot massage makes people safe for the ground. What they're saying in here is that there is a parasympathetic correlation with certain trigger points or whatever in the feet that scientifically enhance the parasympathetic system, along with carotid sinuses, because we have a lot of what they call chemoreceptors and baroreceptors there, along with the fact that the vagal nerve is very close in proximity. And then here's another goofy one that I've been introduced to recently, the roof of the mouth. And the roof of the mouth is right where that vagus nerve is. And so some manual stimulation of all of these things can help induce some kind of temporary parasympathetic state in order to exercise the system and maybe get it up online a little bit while the sympathetic system is trying to bully everything. Another one, prayer and meditation. What these kind of tell me is like a centering of the mind, a quieting of things, a focus, a higher connection to yourself and others. And so in looking at all the ways that we can exercise, I say exercise, or we can say penetrate, or we can say affect, the parasympathetic system, if we can intermittently put these all throughout our day to decrease sympathetic state, we will inherently be at a better rested state and at a greater neutral neurologically throughout the day, and therefore allow ourselves to be able to have higher cognitive functioning when all of this is freed up. The interesting part of the vagus nerve is that these are kind of non-traditional exercises to do, that once you are able to regulate this system, meaning you're able to rest, and then you're able to get intense and fight when you need to, your exercise, your workouts, your oxygen efficiency, your aerobic capacity, your strength, your neurological recovery, everything that people measure in the gym ends up being better because you have a better regulation of these symptoms, or of this system. And this system is so intimately correlated, one, because of the vagus nerve, but the fact that we study this vagus nerve gives us these exercises. these exercises help us keep neutral and balanced. So when we go to work out, we can get here intensely, but most importantly, we can come out of it and rest. So when we go to bed, we aren't doing a CrossFit workout or loading a UPS truck or whatever it is we did all day. The fact we can kick this parasympathetic in at any time and get ourselves to a rested state gives us more space in our life, in our brain, and in our nervous system to do other things. Thanks for listening.